So whenever someone is talking about like, oh, well, AI is never going to do this or that, look at their pedigree. If they are not actively in industry, then their credibility is much lower. Now, that's not to say, again, broken clock can be right twice a day. But at the same time, here's what really clued me in. Let me just end with this story. Is I was looking up like, Cal Newport and Acemoglu and all these other guys, and I'm like, why aren't any of them talking about the engineers and other people who are 10 times more productive or 100 times more productive with these tools? And I was even arguing with Claude. It's like, Claude's like, I need to push back on the notion that someone could be 100x more productive. I'm like, run the goddamn numbers. And it's like, I was like, look at an agent harness. How many agents can you run in parallel? And all these other tasks. And it's like, okay, yeah, I was a little bit rushed because that number looked hyperbolic. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm a real human who uses this stuff. So get on my high horse here for a second. Get on my soapbox. So when there's a real concrete thing that happens in reality, and the concrete thing is that I am personally on any given day more than 10 times more productive than I ever was before in terms of learning, reading, researching, building models, building data, that sort of stuff. Why? Because I can have 10 parallel conversations on 10 different topics. And because I have a big ADHD brain, I can switch between them. And each one of those is saving me many, many hours per day in terms of learning, in terms of output, in terms of input, and that sort of thing. That fact, which, that's me, I'm a power user, but there's also power users who are not technical. There are power users out there who are technical, who take it further than me. And so these academic people, they never study Andre Karpathy. Like they're like, oh, well, he's an aberration. He's an outlier. That's how they mentally classify everyone who is a 10x to 20x to 100x user. They say they're just outliers. Those are the examples that prove the rule that most people aren't that productive. And then when you look even closer at the studies, so the studies that Cal Newport loves to cite, saying, well, there's the I didn't even know what they call it. They call it like the work slop or something, but it's like, if you make an engineer use AI, then they're actually 20% slower and it increases bugs by 90%. When you look closer at that study, they said, okay, here's an engineer in the code base that they are familiar with, that they've been working in for years, and you give them a tool that they're not familiar with. And so it's like, it is so disingenuous. It's like, it's the equivalent of lying, right? Like what anyone with common sense would say when they look at some of these studies is it is a lie. Now, of course, it's dressed up in the trappings of academia and, oh, well, we did this. And it's like, but the framing and the context and the stuff that they don't advertise as a top line, it's like, yes, if you take an engineer and put them in a code base that they're deeply familiar with because they've been working in it for years, and then give them a tool that they're not familiar with, yes, they're going to be slower and it's going to generate more bugs than they do. However, that's not a real test. That's not a real test of saying, okay, how long does it take an engineer to go from zero to working product? That study doesn't exist yet because of academia being so slow and academia being so, for whatever reason, completely biased and trying to control the narrative and sabotage AI just because it's the fun thing to do. And it's just like, you can't trust hardly any of it without double checking. And then when you understand like the flaws with these studies, you realize this isn't real science. This is not useful information. This is not actionable information. And this is where I'm reminded of something that Jeff Bezos says,